All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 5:30. We'll go ahead and start with roll call.
Okay. Donna Kramer. Ben Metzger.
Here.
Tim Mills.
Here.
Matt Rankin's not here. Ryan Werling.
Here.
Sue Wilson.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a quorum.
We'll go ahead with the good news.
Several things. I'll run through them kind of quickly here. I've got about 10 different things. I think all of these have been shared on Facebook too, if you do follow our district Facebook page. We have some pictures there from Skills USA. This is a career technical club that we have, and also they have competitions. And we had students compete in carpentry, the Teamworks Challenge, and in Quiz Bowl. You have some pictures there. There's an update on the state solo and ensemble contest, and a special mention of Erica Nupp, who was best of center at that contest. You have some pictures from Special Olympics out at Indianola Stadium one day, and I know our soccer team and our peer PE class went out and supported those participants. There are some pictures in the career technical world again from the Build My Future event. This is a skilled trades event that draws kids from all across the state. And we had, again, a teacher and some counselors and some students at that. Also, the kind of fun school to work, the picture there, the fifth thing, our Irving fourth graders were designing food trucks, having a food truck unit, and who better to have come by. The Outside Scoop came and talked to them, and I think there were some samples being shared. And that's an Indianola High School grad you probably know too that runs that business, so I think that was fun for them. You have some Indianola Police Department Easter Bunny people who were at Emerson there, having a good time with the kids. Then a couple of notices off Twitter that I pulled in there. One was boys golf win at Pella, and the other was Walker Whalen, and I've got another picture of him in there later. Walker, in the span of about 14 hours at one meet, broke the school record, threw 185 something in the discus, and came back and by 11 o'clock the next morning had thrown 202.10, which I think is the third best in the country this year, maybe fourth best in the state ever. And I wrote him a note. I said I coached throwers for 11 years and was around a lot of good throwers. I never saw anything like that. So that is a great throw. We have a picture of our Iowa FFA degree seniors there on stage. That's the highest honor for a high school FFA student, and sometimes they come back even as alumni then and go the next step. Then I had a little notice in there, the promo from the Spells of Madame Ophelia. This was the 8th grade movie this year, and it's been nominated for an Iowa Motion Picture Association Award. And then finally, kind of a fun thing. I admire people who do this, even though I have no desire whatsoever. You have one of our middle school associates ran the Boston Marathon, Seth Nostrala, and a picture of him. So kind of a variety of good news this time.
Any board member reports?
I was just going to also say the middle school had their art show, and it was very, very well done. They had a laser show, and they had all the kids' stuff out there, and they actually had people coming in and answering questions, and there was a learning aspect of it. So it was very well done by the whole art department over at the middle school. They did a really nice job. It was on a Friday, and maybe a week ago or something, so.
It was well done. I went too, yeah. Did a great job.
Anybody else? All right. Well, I'm sure you guys didn't get wind that I was going to run this meeting and you just wanted to come watch me. So we have some people here to speak. So just as a reminder for board policy, we limit public comment for each speaker 5 minutes, and Ray will put a timer up there for you. So, Johnny.
Yep. Aaron Labertu.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Labertu, and I'd like to address the recent topic of supposedly controversial books in our schools. This message is both for the school board as well as for our community to reflect on. So when I began hearing about calls to ban books from our schools going around the country, my immediate reaction was to wonder what nation I had woken up in. Last I had checked, this is America, where we value liberty and freedom of thought. Books that ask uncomfortable questions or point out inconvenient truths are a vital part of our democracy. They help to raise future citizens who will have the critical thinking skills necessary to avoid making the same mistakes that our ancestors made. These mistakes are things like slavery, the genocide of the Native American people, not allowing women to vote until 1920, and things like systemic racism that many people today still don't want to admit is a reality, unfortunately. But this recent wave of not so carefully manufactured fear is troubling on another level as well. It points to a decay of empathy for our own children, for our fellow citizens, and for our teachers that we entrust with our kids' education. I want everyone in this room, school board and community alike, to set aside the rhetoric and the sound bites for a moment. Put yourselves in the shoes of one of your children and imagine that they are gay or bisexual, or that they were born feeling like they're the wrong gender. For some in our community, they don't have to imagine this, it's reality. Some of these kids get lucky and they're born to parents who will love them unconditionally, no matter what. For too many, they are simply too afraid to ever admit what they are feeling to their parents, sometimes even to themselves, much less talk about that to anyone. So these books that everyone are getting so worked up about, these are sometimes the first moment those unfortunate kids realize that what they're feeling is not unique, that they're not alone. Because what they're feeling is simply being human. They're not sick, and they don't need fixing just for wanting to be who they are. So far from being anything pornographic, these books are simply illustrating what life is like growing up as one of those children, trying to figure out what is going on with their own bodies, what these waves of hormones are doing to them. I would wager that there are far more romance novels roaming the halls of the high school that have much more detailed depictions of sexual encounters than any of these books that are being maligned by certain groups with ulterior motives. For our community, I would also like to challenge anyone that has concerns about these books or questions about what is being taught in the class to have an honest conversation with the teachers that are presenting this material. Again, employ your empathy. Go to the meetings seeking understanding. Try to take the time to schedule a face-to-face conversation with these teachers, because doing that will remind you that they are human beings and not some sinister cult member trying to brainwash your child. Get the real story of what's being taught from those that are teaching it, and stop relying on sound bites from news organizations who make money by selling outrage. Above all, remember this though. The track record of any nation who chooses to limit free thought, ban inconvenient truths, or outlaw lifestyles they disagree with, it never ends well. History has proven this repeatedly. Nazi Germany, the USSR, followed by the Russian Federation. The state of Florida isn't looking so great right now either. Our liberty and freedoms are what make this nation so strong. But that only works when everyone has the same rights and opportunities to thrive. Banning books simply because they make us uncomfortable will make us less diverse of thought, make our community less welcoming, and weaken our town, state, and nation. We can and must do better for our community. Thank you.
Mindy Blanchard.
Hi, my name is Mindy, and I'm also here in response to discussion about controversial books. All the books in the school district are young adult or younger rated books, which means they are appropriate for young adults, which is what we have in schools. Even if it may be a sensitive subject, it's written geared toward their maturity level. The ALA Bill of Rights states that we should not accept or that we should not deny access to library materials based on age. The purpose of school libraries is to provide resources to meet the diverse needs of students. Books allow us to learn and explore, and to see a new perspective. If we restrict anything that's uncomfortable, such as sexual content, LGBT material, race, or violence, we deny our students the opportunity to learn and prepare for adulthood, which is what education is all about. That's why we're here. To learn different viewpoints and grow as individuals and our students as independent thinkers. Young adult books present these topics in an appropriate manner. To argue that Iowa or Indianola School District has pornography in the libraries is wrong. Some YA books do reference sex and sexuality. However, it's used to develop character and theme, not for erotic purposes that pornography is. That's a very big difference. And when we do have these uncomfortable topics, is our job as parents and community members and teachers to discuss these topics, to explore them and help them learn from them in an appropriate context. Just like we do when they watch movies or TV or social media or the internet, we discuss these topics and help them learn from life. We certainly don't want our children just encountering these topics on the internet, for instance, which they all have wide access to at home, which is not a safe place for them to learn from. Books are an appropriate setting to do so. We need to prepare them for life by doing so, by discussing these topics, not restricting them. So in conclusion, our district does not need to restrict our books. They're written for their maturity level and for them to learn from. We just need to continue these conversations at home to help them grow as individuals.
Aaron Christensen.
Hello, I'm here also to share my thoughts about the proposed rating system for books in our high school library. I have 4 children. 2 are currently enrolled in Indianola High School, and I also have 2 recent graduates. I've been involved in the community as a scout leader, a youth basketball coach, volunteered at many school events, and I'm still recovering from an after-prom party where I was up until 4 a.m. I want to recognize that everybody in this room, parents, administrators, school board members, teachers, I think we're all on the same team here. We're trying to do our best for our children. I also want to recognize that we're going to have different opinions when we're trying to make that happen. So let's talk about this idea of book ratings. Why now? Do we have issues spiraling out of control in our high school that we think are caused by these books? Drugs, alcohol, violence? I don't think so. Did the library suddenly receive some influx of controversial books? No. A lot of these books that have been raised as controversial have been on the shelves for quite some time. Are we out of step with accepted best practices for high school libraries across the country? No. The fact is that we have a vocal minority that feels uncomfortable with some of these books, the topics, or even certain passages within a book. They feel that they're inappropriate, and so they're trying to lock things down, make things safe. I personally think that's a bad idea. Some might view this book rating system as a compromise, some way to make both sides happy and protect our students. But I think that approach is pretty flawed. I'll share a few reasons why. One is, if we were to go to the effort to rate all of these books, students can easily bypass that. I got my buddy Jim. I'm not allowed to check it out, but I'm going to ask him to check it out for me. Problem solved. I'm going to walk down to the corner bookstore. I'm going to go to Jordan Creek Mall, and I'm going to buy the book myself. It doesn't solve that problem. If a kid thinks they need to read that book, or there's something in there that is interesting to them, they're going to find a way to read it. Implementation. I would argue that it's going to be a large effort with very little value. If we're going to go and attempt to rate all these books, we ought to have professionals that are doing it outside of our school district, right? Independent professionals, educators, librarians. We're going to want probably 2 or 3 of these people to rate every book so that we've got a cross-section of ideas and it's not just up to one person to do it. We've got thousands of books that they're going to need to rate. We're probably talking a 2 or 3 year effort to get through all this, get approval. We're going to have a committee to come up with how are we going to rate these books? If there are 3 cuss words, what rating is that? Is that a 2? Is it a 5? What about if there's some sort of sexual encounter? What if we've got violence? If I'm looking at an Agatha Christie book and there's 1 murder, what's that rating? What if there are 3 or 4 murders in that mystery? What about an attack on Pearl Harbor? Is that a 5? Nazi concentration camps? There are all kinds of ugly things, uncomfortable things to read about, but all of those have a place in our library. And no matter how much thought and effort goes into creating a rating system and going through and rating all these books, I guarantee you that at the end of the day, we will have the same disagreements with parents about what that rating is. Well, I think this is a 4. I think this is a 2. Why was my kid allowed to check this out? There's no way that should be rated a 2. And so we're going to be right back to where we started. We should not be judging books based on a single passage. We need to judge them in their entirety. Our library does not contain illicit material. It contains valuable resources for our students. It's a rich resource, our library. It's managed by trained professionals, and they have the best interests of our students in mind. I, for one, am thankful for their dedication to the education and well-being of our students. I trust their expertise, and I think the majority of parents feel the same way. There's a simple alternative to this book rating system, and that is if a parent is uncomfortable letting their student check out books from the library without the parents first previewing it, we'll give them that opportunity. School board members and administrators, I'm asking you all to carefully consider the negative implications of establishing a book rating system. For the sake of our students and the reputation of our school, I ask you to dismiss the idea of a book rating system at our high school library.
I was a reading support teacher at Irving for over 20 years. I'm a mom of 3 girls who went to Indianola schools, and I also was one of the 3 community members that served on the reconsideration committee. I had a lot of thoughts coming into this, but the more I thought about it, the more I listened to what others had to say, I think I can hone it down a little bit. So I'm very thankful that you are having the opportunity to hear another perspective, because I think it's always good to hear from all different angles. I think there's some important questions for you to consider before you make a decision about restricting books. First of all, I think it's also really important for you to know that pornography does not exist in our schools. The books that have been challenged have been in our libraries anywhere from a few years to several years. Prior to this year, have any books been challenged? I don't know. Why is it all of a sudden an issue? And why is it imperative that we have a rating system? Where does the rating system come from? Who developed it? What qualifications did they have? Is it truly a neutral party? Who will be responsible for determining which rating system to use? Who will be tasked with reading the thousands of books in our libraries to determine the ratings? And has such a task been budgeted for? It's not possible to judge a book based solely on reading a few passages or pages. It's the context, the nuance that matters. And that was very clear to those of us who served on the reconsideration committee. This district already has a system in place that addresses the books that parents take issue with. I got to experience that, and I will tell you, it works. Parents already have the right and responsibility to restrict books their own child reads. All it takes is communication with their kids and with the school. Books contain characters who are flawed. just as we all are. It's important for students to have access to books where they can identify with characters who may have the same struggles as themselves. Sometimes these struggles are uncomfortable. Growing up is hard. Our libraries must provide books to reach a wide range of students. They come from so many different backgrounds and face so many different challenges. But that's just my opinion. Don't take my opinion or the opinions of those who spoke at the last board meeting or outside interest groups. Instead, talk to the experts within our own district, the librarians, the administrators, and English teachers. Many of them are parents themselves. So they have so much insight and expertise on age-appropriate literature for our students. They give a lot of thought and vetting to books they choose. I cannot tell you how impressed I was listening to their conversations and their rationale for the books they chose at the reconsideration committee meetings. It made me feel proud to be a part of this district. And I hope that you will make your decision after you've talked to the experts within our own district. Let's trust the educational professionals who are employed by the Indianola Community School District to do their jobs, do their due diligence, and provide books to meet the needs of all students in our district. And let's trust parents to know what their children are reading and determine if that book is appropriate for their own child. I know you all want what's best for the kids in our district. Please, at the very least, think about what you heard tonight. Talk to the professionals within our district before you decide to restrict books in any way. Restricting books is a slippery slope. It's a big deal. It's also a solution in search of a problem.
Kathy Ferris.
I'm a little afraid to speak after those wonderful speakers. We have a good tradition in our country of banning books. Even in the 1600s, the Puritans were banning books that did not agree with their or made fun of them. You won't be surprised that Uncle Tom's Cabin was banned by the Confederacy. And we go on and on. One of my favorite children's books, and I was a librarian at Emerson, which at that time was an underpaid, overworked, joyful job. My favorite job in the whole world. But a book came out called And Tango Makes Three. It's a story of two male penguins raising a chick. It is a delightful book. It's still on the banned book list, guys. How sad. Then I was a teacher for 15 years, mostly English. And my favorite, art history. The reasons that people ban books are so spread out over what we can read. For example, I wore my Winnie the Pooh shirt. Winnie the Pooh is banned in China. And it's banned because people made fun of the president. I don't know if you call him a president or dictator, whatever he is, of China. They made fun and said he looked like Winnie the Pooh. Amazingly, there has been a huge uptick in the sale of Winnie the Pooh books in China. Winnie the Pooh, Charlotte's Web, and Three Little Pigs was banned in England. It was banned for kind of a nice reason. They were afraid that they would offend the many Muslim children that were in their community. Fortunately, the Muslim leader said, no, thank you, but no. Bring those books back. The Lorax has been banned. That's one of my favorite books. It's one of the first things that addresses climate change and the destruction of the earth. Now there's some more common ones. When you look through the list, I always look through the list of what was, because this came up in my mind. Now Ryan remembers me. I didn't give him really bad books when he was a little boy. In Kansas, they got rid of Charlotte's Web not very many years ago because talking animals are blasphemous. Now, some of the more current ones, which we're talking about, I don't know what this attack is on kids who are not heterosexuals. I don't know what the attacks, but Tango Makes Three is part of that attack. The Hate U Give is a wonderful book. I'm of the opinion that books for young adults are some of the best books written in our country. The Hate U Give is about a young girl from poor, segregated section of town who goes to a rich prep school. And when her boyfriend is killed by a policeman, she stands up for him. Not right away, but she does. Harry Potter. Oh my gosh. Banned like crazy. I, as a sophomore English teacher at Sheraton High School, required my sophomores to read one book and report on it every quarter. These were my rules. You get extra points if it's from a different culture than your own. If you've ever been to Sheraton, you know most of you don't fit that culture. Okay, number 2. Is it an award winner? You got extra credit points. Number 3. If it's a banned book, you get extra credit. Now, I have a feeling that perhaps not every parent knew that. But I had several girls that read Maya Angelou's book because award winner on the college bound list, banned book. It was a glory to get 30 or 40 extra points. Okay, Harry Potter. Fortunately for the sophomores, that came in about the same time. Yes.
We're at 5 minutes.
You're kidding. Okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention. Pay attention to the books. They're important.
That's all we have on our list. If somebody else wants to speak, we do have a sign-up sheet if anyone else will speak.
Ben, can I say something really quick? I just want to thank you guys for coming and speaking so respectfully and not creating chaos in the boardroom like has occurred in other places. So thank you all very much for being respectful and giving us more information.
You're more than welcome to stay, but if this is the only topic interesting you, you're free to leave too.
Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I snuck in the middle of that. I don't know if you saw that.
I gotcha. Yeah, thanks.
I'll move and make approval of the consent agenda.
All right. Motion made by Sue.
Second.
Mac. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We're on to some presentations. I think we have Sarah is up. You ready?
Kind of sad everybody didn't stay. Good evening, I'm Sarah Baker and I'm the Director of Special Programs. My responsibilities for the district are special education, homeschool, I work with at-risk, and I'm also the homeless liaison for the district. I was here in January to do kind of an update on recent improvements we've been working on in special education, and then the associate support that we provided. And there were a few questions that came up that night, so I just wanted to come back and kind of respond to those and update you on a few other things. So there were some questions about what a typical day for an associate looked like. One more, right, please. And so I reached out to a variety of different associates and asked them to kind of conduct a time study of their day, just to get a sense of how they're spending their time. And their time is varied in the various areas. So student supervision, that would be not necessarily that they're working on an academic task for a student, but maybe recess duty, lunch duty, making sure the kid travels through the hallways safely. Material prep, there's some students that have specific materials. They might need materials enlarged or color coded. They might work on that. They're working with students on academic or behavior tasks. They might be communicating with other staff. Documentation, we have our associates work a lot with documentation for Medicaid and also point sheets. And then there was kind of this category of other. When we look at our associates, I kind of think of, we have two groups. We have a large group of associates that work with multiple students. And so I have a kind of a pie chart that shows how they spent their day. I think it's coming. There it is. And the majority of their day is spent working with students, which is the yellow or kind of chartreuse colored on the screen, or student supervision, which is the blue. And then they do have some pockets with documentation, material prep, in that other category. And then the next group of associates we look at are really our associates that work with 1 to 2 students. And they're typically the same students that they work with all of the time. And so that's really just split between them either supervising them or working with them on academic tasks. So that was the information I collected on that piece. The next thing I wanted to update you on was technology. Through that process of collecting more information about how associates spent their day, we've decided to move forward with some additional technology for associates. And it's all going to be based on the IEP needs of the students. So some of those IEP needs would be documentation, which I kind of mentioned before, assessment support, especially at the secondary level. If students need tests read to them, or they might need tests pre-recorded, technology would allow associates to do that. And then also reading aloud materials would be another way that they might be used, either for students. And so we're going to start with that rollout with secondary associates next fall based on student IEP needs. So if an associate is working with a student where it's not appropriate, we'll kind of review that situation as they come up. And then we'll provide some training in August with the computers and the associates on that. And then we're going to kind of continue to evaluate to see if we want to move forward with the elementary associates on that. And then the last thing I just want to talk about is training for special education associates. I mentioned this last time, but I just kind of wanted to put it in the 3 different levels that when we look at that. There's district level training for our special ed associates, and that's part of the hiring process where they go through a lot of training on what an IEP looks like, the importance of confidentiality. Also, there are mandatory reporters in there, chapter 103 about seclusions and restraints, and then the most exciting one, bloodborne pathogens. The next tier of training would be building level training, and that would be about like building procedures and specific level building things, needs, and then the next within that building then too is like scheduling. The individual buildings do the scheduling for associates, and then the next level kind of would be student specific training. So a student specifically needs different accommodations, and the teacher would work with them on that. And if we found that the student that they're working with needs additional training, like through crisis prevention intervention, we would make sure associates have the verbal or holds part of that. So those are the updates I had for you. Are there any questions?
I had a question, Sarah.
Yeah.
So the associates that monitor like 1 to 2 kids, whose day is split between monitoring students and working with students, versus the group that has the break to do the documentation and stuff like that. Is there less turnover with the group that kind of gets an opportunity to do the documentation and almost kind of gets a, and I'm not looking for you to do research, it's just something for you to just, I'm wondering in my brain, I'm like, does somebody get a break by doing documentation that allows them to kind of hit the reset button? And so that's the only context in which I asked that question. But.
I don't necessarily have the numbers at the tip of my fingertips, but I would actually say that the associates that work with 1 or 2 associates or students, they're so tied to the student that they work with that they tend to work pretty regularly.
Interesting, okay.
Medicaid documentation would not be a favored duty.
Thing to do, okay.
I mean, I understand what you're saying in terms of breaking it up.
Yeah.
But,
That's not how it works.
Yeah, it's not highly sought after, would be my
I don't know what you're talking
impression.
about.
Sarah loves it.
I love that kind of stuff. But that is a interesting question to dig into some more.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to the Teacher Quality Committee report.
Yeah, just some brief minutes for you there. This was a meeting that was a while in coming because we knew that we wanted to hear from a couple of focus groups that were created on the topics of teacher evaluation and peer review. And the Teacher Quality Committee is a committee that we're required to have equal representation of administrators and teachers. And they have some input on teacher evaluation. We do get teacher quality funds as well, which go toward professional development. So sometimes there's a budgetary report to them in terms of how those are getting spent. This particular meeting, we did focus on those 2 things that I just mentioned. And there was some pretty, I think, interesting and really heartening findings. You know, we talked about evaluation and talked to 100 teachers about their experience with evaluation in different places. Some will tell you, I haven't been evaluated forever, or it was a check the box type thing. And there was a lot different feel than that here locally. And, you know, we really, first of all, we have great teachers, but through evaluation, we try to get them to be reflective about their practice and support them. And one of the things that originally launched this focus group was a desire to make sure that we were being fairly consistent building to building, because things come up like, well, how do you treat portfolios in your building versus my building? Those were kind of the original questions. But one of the findings after seeking input from every building was that there really is a high degree of consistency between buildings. We also heard that the new platform we have, which is Talent Ed, which we use for evaluation as well as for hiring, has really helped bring a lot of consistency to the process. That's something that Mimi kind of inherited, has been learning on the fly, but it's been a really good tool. So I came away from that feeling very good, and I'll invite Mimi or Annette to jump into with any other observations they have. The other one, the peer review, this is something we're required to have, and it's non-evaluative, but teachers, it's very tough to to find the time to bounce ideas off each other, observe each other, reflect on lessons. We've done things through professional development through the years that lend themselves to this. Like we spent several years as a district on authentic intellectual work, which has teachers come together in scoring groups to score tasks that they're asking students to do, or to score student work, or to score instruction. That'd be one example of peer review. But the focus group has begun the process of creating kind of a menu of options teachers can choose from on that, and talking about the makeup of groups, and that focus group was was teachers giving input there, and I think as a district our approach is we want to be legal, we want to do what we're required to do, but we also want to do it in a way that is beneficial and makes sense for people. I think peer review is a really good example of that. you or Nat, I tried to intentionally not just read through the minutes, but talk off script. Anything else from those?
Yeah, I would say one interesting fact that came out from this was that the focus group for the evaluation process commented that they wanted more opportunities to go and see other teachers and to be in other people's classrooms to see their practice and how things work. And so the peer review process actually supports that. So out of that menu of choices, we'll have a variety of ways that we can support teachers in doing that more for them as one of their choices. So that was just an interesting connection between those two things.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that we specifically did a couple of deep dives and came back with, wow, we're really doing a great job already. You know, a couple of tweaks, but for the most part, things were going very well. So that was kind of great.
Any questions over that? Move on to the board curriculum committee report. Meeting report.
Well, you guys can kind of see what we talked about. The first thing was an update on the elementary science pilot program that is going to be starting in the fall. And just kind of went through the goals, hopefully to have a program that aligns with the next generation science standards and something that can be useful to other elementary school. And that's kind of, they're still kind of in the development phase of that. Next thing, and that walked us through kind of the standards. It's called the Iowa Department of Education website for Iowa Core Standards. Just kind of give us an example of just the detail of how these teachers and these departments have to fulfill core guidelines by the state of Iowa within their material. And just it's really interesting to walk through the there's kind of a step here that you have to fulfill, and there's a step beneath that, and a step beneath that, more and more detail on how specifically what needs to be accomplished. She walked us through, I think, a literature for what was it, like grade 4 or something like that you walked us through, and it's
Yeah,
just
we went from grade 4 into literacy then, and then into writing, and then into the text types and purposes.
Yeah,
And then the subcategories of that.
just that's great. Interesting. And please jump in if you need it updated more than I remember. There's a lot of information. Another thing that another interesting thing for me was the learning instructional, or not instructional, the day that teachers have an instructional in-service, kind of how it was very detailed in its that was a day full of sessions, I guess, or teaching sessions or learning sessions on technology and I don't know if I can explain as well as it was just interesting how to see how these teachers are using their instructional days very
That rotation schedule up there, the instructional sessions that Ryan's talking about, that was a direct result of teacher feedback on core knowledge language arts, our new language arts curriculum, which has been very well received and very well implemented. But anytime you have a new curriculum, you start to notice those gaps, or you start, you implement with fidelity, but you start to notice things that you wish maybe it did that you're not aware of. So this was an attempt to get activity and students moving within the context of that core knowledge language arts. And you can tell that from if you read some of the rotation schedule topics like wiggle cards. I don't know what a wiggle card is, but I bet it got the kids moving, So I don't know if Annette wants to speak more to that, but that kind of came directly from the teachers, didn't it, those sessions?
Yeah, we know kids need to move. It helps them stay engaged, gives them a little bit of a brain break, but we still want to stay true to continuing out with their curriculum too. And so we know we have very creative teachers, so this was an opportunity for them to go through very short sessions, see some strategies from their peers. I was very thankful for those teachers that took themselves out of the rotation so that they could present to their peers through that time. And then that was also replicated by Ali Sauter and a lot of our teacher leaders through, which are collaboration and innovation teachers. We had some of our tech department people help present. So in getting that digital learning environment, getting teachers familiar with different tools, with the focus on, it's not the tool, it's how do you want to enhance student learning. So what do you want to enhance with their learning, and then you pick a tool. It's not the reverse. And so just to get them comfortable with some of the things that they might select very specifically within their teaching and expose them to those types of tools. So we built in a lot of reflection time, planning time, sharing time, and I think it was up to, it was like 95%, I believe, positive feedback on those sessions overall. It was very well received by the teachers, so.
I just have a question about the science. Is she going to have a room, or is she going to go to all the classrooms?
Right, so our committee, science committee, will meet tomorrow after school for the first time. We're gonna meet at Emerson, and that's one of the things that Mark Timmerman and Maddie are getting some input on. So we're gonna tour Emerson and kind of look at what that structure might look like. Part of that discussion too is whether, like for the older students, perhaps they can travel more and travel more quickly, and the littles, as they say, maybe they're more classroom-based and she goes to them. So as we're still figuring out what that curriculum might be that's utilized, there's some field testing of that going on. And so
Or just like lab things going on, and that's hard to set up in a classroom when there's other things going on.
right, so I went over to Irving and observed one of the lessons that Maddie had taught, and it's really interesting how you can bring it in, break out the equipment, and they're just trained. You train, and kids, this is how you pack it up. So I want to make sure that's very doable, and we know that each elementary building is structured differently. So that's why it's important for us to keep this committee involved, so they're processing and thinking about this. In case there would be any roadblocks, we can try to address those pretty early on. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else on that? We have HR technology. On to the auxiliary services building project.
Carrie's back.
Carrie with us again from Envision. Yep. And this was our main topic at our facilities committee too.
Sure. So I was here at the April 12th meeting, and you all have presented me with a couple of questions that you wanted me to follow up with. Following the meeting, your apparent low bidder from the bidding time had proactively listened to the board meeting and reached out with responses directly to your questions. Want to make sure you're aware that they proactively did that. They indicated in the email, which I've shared with the district, that 3 foot of fill that was required below the slab that was in question was indeed included in their bid, and they had full understanding of the geotechnical report that was issued and the requirements to that. I called and talked to them also following up on their email and just verified the information they had shared, and they were very knowledgeable of all of the requirements and had given assurance that they had included it. They had described, another question had just on the discrepancy of the unit costs compared to other bidders that you had received, and for them it was just the uncertainty and the unknown, and having had past experiences with this type of unit cost that they had included more dollars than maybe some other of the bidders, and they have the right to do that under the public bidding laws. There's not a threshold on those unit amounts, but they did give an explanation for that as well. So we have sent a recommendation to the district that we feel like
this has been vetted at this point. I'm happy to answer any questions, but it does appear that your concerns have been addressed with this particular bidding situation. And so I just wanted to, I'm here this evening to answer any more questions you might have, or if you'd like any further detail on that email or conversation, I would be happy to entertain that.
Have further questions. I think that I appreciate the work that you did to clarify. I know a lot of those questions were coming from me, so
They were very good questions, very fair. So.
I appreciate your
Yeah.
efforts to clarify, and so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was outlined pretty good in your summary and in the email response.
This is an action item.
So we need to make a motion to accept the bid. Is that what we're doing?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll make the motion that we accept the low base bid.
This is just a procedural question really quick. Do we need to, since we table that, take it off the table before we?
Typically, this takes it off the table.
Okay,
so.
perfect. Just want to make sure procedurally we're good. Sorry to interrupt.
On and off the table.
Prove it until it's on the table. Okay.
I won't say anything. I'll accept the low bid base from Graphite Construction.
Okay, motion made by Sue. Seconded by Tim. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries 6-0. Gary.
I'll let you know next time we anticipate a lot of public comment, I'll invite you back for something.
Perfect.
That's what you specialize in, so.
Yeah, very patient.
We will be back with updates.
All right, on to the middle school renovation project.
Got a recommendation there. Michael Clean's here from Shive Hattery too. He may want to, I'm sure he'd make himself available for questions, but you have a letter there, a recommendation from Shive Hattery. That was a case where, again, we had multiple bidders, and in this case, the bids came in under the architect's budget, which is always nice too. So I don't know if you have questions for Michael. I'm sure he'd answer.
Make a motion to approve the bid.
All right, motion made by Mac. Seconded by Ryan. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries 6-0. All right, on to the highlight. At least John is highlight.
Okay.
Monthly financials.
That's right.
Walk-up music.
We need some entrance music for you. Fog machine. Yeah, fog machine.
Well, nothing's too exciting, really. We are status quo if you look at, our general fund continues to do well. And it's mainly the COVID money that, we've inflated that. We're still having the expenditures, but that just increases us that much more. Activity fund, if you look at the activity fund, it's been interesting as we've moved through. Activity fund is doing better than it's ever done, $435,000. Last year it was just under $300,000. The year before that, it's stayed pretty steady. Like I've said, they lost revenue, but they also lost expenditures, so they held pretty steady. Management fund, again, we're about the same, and you kind of go across and see the different items. We will have our first expenditures out of the Pearl Fund. The different elementaries are adding sunshades to parts of their playground, so that will be a good piece for our Pearl, but we've just put revenue in. We've not had any expenditures, so. Local option and PEPAL are, we're trying to save for this building that's now been approved, so now we can work towards that. Status quo, like I said. The next, if you look at the budget, the second one for the certified budget comparison, we will be amending our budget because we've seen it. We have increases for number one, the retention payments. We took that was not budgeted in there. The COVID monies we sort of budgeted, so we'll look at it and see what we need to do. It does not hurt us to do an amendment to our budget. There's no increase in revenue. It's just if you've got expenditures that may go outside what you thought you were going to do. So that will be happening in May. So probably the second meeting in May. And then the graph shows that the huge increase that we have this year versus the last 9 years, so. Any questions?
This is an action item.
Where is the?
Make a motion to approve the monthly financial report.
All right, motion made by Ryan,
Second.
seconded by Mac. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. On to Board Facilities Committee meeting.
It's basically a rehash of what we had just talked about, you know. Nobody wants to add anything to that.
That worked. Anybody have any questions over it? All right, move on to Board Finance.
You want to start, or do you want me to start?
I don't want to take any wind out of your sails. And I think your plan for how you were going to talk through it, I think is
Tim, myself, Art and John met last Wednesday. We hashed through, a lot of different things. The first thing was the teacher retention payments. I think there was a little bit of concern from the finance committee as well as the board on how we make this work financially. As everyone knows, we had 34 and a half FTE that did not receive that bonus. We had attempted to utilize TSS funds because those funds were available to make that retention payment. IAA was not interested in that. And so part of our conversations around the retention payments were, what are our other options? Do we have other options? I think it's fair to say that, we would like to have money available to incentivize the staff that did not get incentivized. The one thing that we did notice at that point was that there were a few districts that did here in Central Iowa use TSS funds to offset the retention payments for the staff that did not get it from the state. And so we decided that we would kind of talk through some other options. And that's, I think, kind of really what we need to talk about as a board tonight is whether or not we're comfortable with utilizing funding, or if this is just something that's not an option at this point for us to move forward with. Jonna, can you kind of jump in, I guess, a little bit and talk particularly about the two different options that we talked about?
At the meeting, we talked about, one option is, if you remember, we talked about SBRC, the School Budget Review Committee. They have, the state has come back and said we can utilize that, and it would be almost like a class action approval if we do that. The good and bad of that is it gives us the budget to do that, but we use our own cash, which, if you're trying to hold harmless, that wouldn't do that. You would lose the cash. The other option was using the flexibility fund. So if you remember last year, we used flexibility fund for curriculum, and then PD, we kind of did a two-step process so that now we have PD monies that aren't really related to the state PD, but we can kind of identify those as we need them for different trainings that our teachers need. So the flexibility fund can be for different things, and we've talked, probably in the late fall, we talked about the negative lunch balances that we have, and we're going to use that to offset that by the end of the year. When I was looking at that, I was using preschool funds. Preschool funds then, since COVID a year ago happened, we lost enrollment. We gained enrollment back. We got for lack of a better word, kind of pennies from heaven, because we never thought we would get any of that, recoup any of those funds for on-time funding for preschool. That was about $79,000. $79,000 would cover the teacher that weren't, the retention payments that weren't paid out. Would also cover our lunch balance deficits, and we'd be kind of held harmless, still having our balance in our preschool fund for what we look at being possibly a cost for a new playground or part of a new playground. It's got about $300,000 in there, and if we continue to use, we use it as we need it, but we kind of save it for bigger projects. That's what we've been looking at. We have not costed out a playground yet. That's not to the point of that, but the $79,000 does cover those two pieces. We have it as cash, and we have it as budget. So it does work out for us, okay to do it that way.
Thanks, John.
Any questions?
The other part of that was within the master contract, getting authorization from IEA to approve the merit increase for the associate positions. IEA made it clear in their letters and in their presentations that it wasn't best practice to open a contract in the middle of the year. And basically, my interpretation was they weren't interested in doing that with the TSS funds attached to the request. I believe it would be in our best interest and in their best interest to have that conversation again, to reopen the contract, to offer an additional $1 an hour increase to our associates. That would be about an 8.24% increase to their salary, which would better align them with metro schools, and it would give us a hand up in comparison to associate hourly rates for districts that are also in the county. I don't think that, personally, my opinion is that we can't move forward and give the 34.5 certified teachers the retention bonus if we choose not to give the associates their merit increase. If we choose to give the associates their merit increase, I think we still have, a decision to make as a group as to whether or not we want to move forward with making those retention payments. We have found an alternative source to make those payments, but at the end of the day, I think we need to be conscientious of our spending on that as well. So I think this is probably, can we break this action item down into two separate?
Actually, it's not an action item. This is discussion here.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only other thing that I would bring up, Mac, that we didn't discuss was the administration staff. So the 19 folks, kind of the comment that we had discussed there was, best way to say it, but it was almost like the administration is the one that came up with this idea. It had board support, and it was kind of a, hey, we want to recognize all the folks that helped weather the storm. And I didn't think it was the right time, personally, I didn't think it was the right time to go out and try to find the monies for the 19 administrative staff, because I felt like that was kind of a gesture of them in the capacity of leadership in which they have across the district to look out for all of the folks that helped us weather the storm. Now, do I think that they are deserving of recognition as well? I do, but I think maybe that's a separate thing. And Art, we talked a little bit about that, and I'm kind of putting you in a bad spot.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something that the board determines the percentage, the pool of money for administrative raises, and then we have this administrator performance-based pay system that looks at market comparables as well as evaluation, and that's that pot of money, that pool of money, typically has been pegged to whatever the master contract raise is. I mean, the way to, if you want to do something for administrators and not make it a one-time thing like that, would be to just give permission to increase that percentage. And I don't know what that dollar, that $19,000 or whatever it is, I don't know what that does to a
Benefits is like
percentage.
22 or just under 23,000, I think. with the
So I don't know if that makes if John has got the proposed staff increases as part of this, this report, the teacher group package cost is 2.21%. The number I've been working off currently is 2.20% for admin. If that percentage changes commensurate with whatever $23,000 is, that'd be one way to address that. I don't have entitlement, waves of entitlement coming off the administration. I mean, they're not camped outside my office saying, where's our retention bonus? I guess the other side of that is, we do expect a lot of our administrators, and especially in the early stages of COVID, when we were on voluntary remote learning in the spring of 2020, there was some scrambling going on to figure out what we were going to do, how we were going to get back to school. That was not a restful summer at all. So, I really do appreciate the work of the administration, just like I do all the other class of employees like you talked about. I think as a district, we did about as well as we could by our kids, and I'm really proud of the work everybody did. So,
when you break the per diem down across the administrative staff, I find some of them are lower than I guess I would have expected.
That's accurate. We do, and there's a wide range of administrative salaries. I mean, there really is, and that's why. I mean, my per diem is plenty, and I made the comment, if you give administrators a retention bonus, don't include me, and of course, retention, I'm not coming back anyway.
Right.
So, your point is well taken. We would have people on the administrative team that on a per diem or daily basis make less than some of our teachers.
Right.
Because they have, their 260-day contracts. There are a couple that are 210-day contracts. The teacher contract's 190. So that's a good point.
When you've done those contracts in the past, or when you're doing the reviews, that method that you use, is that something we can pass along to the new superintendent?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's written out. It's pretty easily explainable.
And you've constantly tried to grow some of those positions to help be competitive with other.
For sure, and that's part of that system too. There's a formula that determines kind of a base raise for everybody, and then there's still some money there where there's some discretion.
Okay.
And if we have, if we either have inequities between administrators in terms of, doing like jobs but somebody's paid a lot less, or if we hired at kind of a lower rate and somebody needs to be accelerated a little bit, there's enough money to basically, kind of accelerate a couple positions each year to try to kind of equalize. I feel pretty good about where we're at compared to 7 years ago in terms of where some salary inequities were.
So would these be action items for the next board meeting if we wanted to proceed, or?
I would say so. I mean, I feel like we need permission to spend that extra money, and I really do. I think all of us want the board's input on what method. So, but we wanted, the finance committee's had some time to kind of mull this over, and I know, I give some board updates and things, but it hasn't been laid out this way publicly for everybody to think about. So I do think it'd be appropriate to come back. And there's not the rush on this that there was on the original retention payment when the state kind of dropped a bomb on us and said, and pay this out in March too. So, John, would you disagree with any of that?
No, I think that, And then if we, my question is, do we bring it to the staffing increases next time, or put something like this together for a action item to move to the next, because it'd be May 24th for the next board meeting, which is 5 days before most of our school year people are gone.
May 10th.
Is the first one.
And then May 24th, right. I think if we put something together as an action item, that gives the opportunity for the
To say
board
yes or
to,
no.
and if it's not whatever we put in there that they want, they can vote it down and change it and pass whatever they want also. I mean, I know we typically bring a pretty solid recommendation that we're pretty sure people support.
Yeah.
But we can, we can definitely put something together, put it out there. If it's not exactly what you want, then I would say vote it down, tweak it, and pass what you want. Does that make sense?
It does, and I agree with that. I think the question that is, is, so we've addressed two out of the three groups. And, I think since it's a discussion item, the only question is that the way that everybody wants to approach it, or do they want to approach it differently? And if they want to approach it differently, then we gotta go back to the data and try to figure out where the strategy for paying it would come from. And so the finance committee, we went through, the two, and we have creative solutions for addressing those two groups of people, but not the third one. Did I say that correctly, Jonna? Okay.
And the 30 being administrative team.
I am, yeah. So $22,000. Roughly.
$20,000, I always think of $20,000 in a $42 million budget.
Yeah.
Is very minimal,
Right.
but it's an increase, right?
And
I mean, I'd like to see us reward them, the administrators, as well as the 20 or 34 teachers or whoever it was. And so it'd be great to find a way to do that, but.
Can we talk through this right now to kind of
Yep.
gauge?
We're having discussion, you certainly can, yep.
I guess my thought would be, let's start with the associates and decide what we think is best and whether or not we want to go back to IEA and ask them to reopen the contract for the beginning of next fiscal year, I assume is how we would, beginning of the school year.
Next school year, yep.
And if we're okay with that, at the $1 an hour raise, and they're willing to accept that, I'm in favor of that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I think that's a good gesture in kind.
And the other piece of that too, Mac's correct, we would need permission to open the contract, but you see on that proposed staff increases, the other support staff that aren't in the master contract, we don't have that same step. It's the board's discretion to approve those meet and confer increases. And just as a summary, those increases are more or less kind of double raises. You can see the percentages.
Equates to the $1,000.
Yeah,
Even across the board?
Yes, Jonna backed into it with using that $1,000.
As a number.
Okay.
And the
It's the
percentages.
benchmark. It's 1,000.
Okay.
Yep.
And the finance committee's thought on that was, we could walk around and give everybody $1,000. But at the end of the day, this is a better alternative for most of these positions, because not only is it an annual increase that they're gonna get every year, it also increases the amount of funding that goes into their IPERS. And so the finance committee kind of agreed that that's probably a better fit
Right.
for them than,
Yeah, I think so too. I
than
agree.
just $1,000, gross check. I do want to point out publicly, in the conversations that we've had, our meet and confer staff are extremely important to us, and I don't want any of them to feel like we're not paying attention to them, or
Right.
that there's preference going to the associates because they're part of the master contract. We're trying to align everyone in our district to be in the spot that they need to be in from a salary perspective comparable to other districts in the area and other districts that are of our size. So overall, we as a board are collaborative on being thankful for everyone. We don't want the percentages to be perceived as anything other than trying to get people to where they need to be and rewarding them for their hard work over the last 2 years.
So then, the only way we can ask to move forward and open that contract then is to use our $79,000, that fund, was that child care?
Preschool.
It's not the only way, but it's,
That's what
to me,
we've
it's the
got.
most attractive way, because this is unexpected one-time money. And it doesn't go and seek the budget authority without the cash behind it.
Okay.
Here, we've got the cash, so.
And to utilize that money for the retention bonuses to the certified staff.
Right.
We don't need,
We don't need
we don't need the contract open for that.
Correct.
The only thing we would need is.
But the only way that
the
would open that
associates.
contract is if we would have found a different fund.
Contract would still need to be open for the associates, though.
Right.
We have to open it for the associates, but not the
Right.
79,000 if we use that for the teachers.
Which is left in that preschool fund then, after we do if we did those things?
There's about, well, the balance at the end of last year was just under 300,000. And again, what we're looking at that for is a playground, or part of a playground at least.
Which is $500,000.
It's a smaller, it's a smaller playground area, so it may not be that much.
Okay.
Now, this extra one-time preschool money that we could use, put in a flexibility fund, was around 79,000.
79,000.
And we proposed using about 30,000 of it to get those unpaid lunch accounts off our books, so we can get rid of that audit comment. And then the additional 39, is that what it would be?
34.5.
37, something?
Yeah, 37.
34.5 people, 37,000. So between those two, that would take all but
wipes
about
that out.
12,000 of that extra.
And that was money that we didn't know we were getting until we got here.
And it's a flex, it's flex money.
Yeah.
It's,
And so there's a process that we need to go through to get that and that will start next month.
Meeting.
Yeah, we have to do a hearing and, that we're using that for a different purpose than what it was arrived at the district for.
Action item number 2 was support staff wage increases. We kind of talked about that a little bit. You've got that chart on your screen. COVID funding for personnel. We did go through and look at a list of 6 or 7 individuals that are currently being paid their salary through COVID funds that are obviously not going to be forever. Some of them, we understand, are going to go back to the general fund. A few of them, we also understand, are not long-term permanent positions. And so just to kind of keep that in mind, we did also talk about, what that's going to look like with our general fund, knowing that we're going to be about $500,000 deficit next year in spending. The number 4 action item was our property and liability insurance renewal. Pretty big increase in that this year, somewhere between 20 and 45%. I don't know if you've got any additional updates since last Wednesday that you can share.
I have not. I've asked for it and I have not received it yet.
And then Jonna went through the PEPAL and SAVE budgets. Got done a little quicker than normal, 8:09. Nice.
Yeah, I guess my only thing is if we want them to be well prepped for 10 May, if we're gonna do 3 things, then we need to identify where that's coming from. If we're not gonna do, because, that's where, I didn't know how to do the math. I didn't know where it was coming from. So I was comfortable making a decision for the 2 groups and potentially addressing the administrative staff at a later date. That's where I was at, but I'm not attached to my own.
Well, we could find 12-ish in the rest of that fund.
And then the rest is,
True.
How much do we need?
23.
Yeah, and basically, if you look at what we've done, in that, go back there, yeah. As you look through there, you see we have the savings, then we have the additionals, which basically negate the savings. So we're at 0 almost, and then the total packages are at, you net out at 1.14. Our new money was 6.3 or 636,000, which gives us a deficit of the 500,000. That piece could be, again, the rest of the preschool money, but that's, I would think that, I think we would just go general fund, that 20,000. And, again, we deficit spend a little bit every year, but by the end of the year, it seems to, we have always gained by the end of the year. What we estimate here is my best case, or best or worst case, however you want to think about it. But then by the end of the year.
Most conservative budget.
Yeah, and then at the end of the year, it seems that, we always seem to something comes in, or not, and then hope is not a strategy, I know that. But,
Those are good words that I'm familiar with.
right, and so $500,000 on our $43 million budget, we should be able to weather that, no problem. As we move forward, if you have $1 million next year, you can't do that every year, right? So typically, we try to be right at zero or close to that. This is unusual, but when you look at all those staff members that we're looking at, we're losing them to, we can lose them to corporate world, all the meet and confers, because they can, all of Ray's guys can go someplace in a corporate world and make more probably than they make here. So.
I don't get it going.
I know,
They might be
but I'm just saying that.
Experience of working with
So
Ray.
part of it is, we're seeing a lot of industry, not just schools, having to increase their starting wages. So if this gives us a one-time bump, and again, that's everything else, and the 20,000 is the smallest piece of that whole thing. I'm not concerned about that, but if you want to have tie it to $1 somewhere, I'm fine with that. But
I think we have to find it somewhere
within the general fund.
for our administrators.
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
think
so,
that those are our leaders, right? And so I just think it's the right thing to do. But I don't like finances, so y'all figure out where it's gonna come from. Just find it.
Spoken just, no,
So are we good with
comfortable with
pulling
us
it out of
moving?
the general fund, going with the other group that we talked out of the 79K, the pre-K, and then trying to open or discussing opening the contract to address the other? Yeah. Because if that's the case, and we've got them, they have enough
Yeah, that's
direction.
enough to plan.
Gives me
And that,
direction.
and that $508,000 deficit for next year includes the proposed increases.
It does.
Okay. And realistically,
With the exception of the admin.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that 20,000 in there.
that $1 an hour increase for associates, doesn't that equate to about 125,000?
157,000.
157,000. Okay.
Are we, so on the admin, are we talking about just a one-time or a shore up of that? I'm sorry, I didn't follow
I
this.
mean, the same logic applies, I'm sure.
I'm sorry.
I guess that's the pleasure of the board. If I were receiving it, I'd say, yeah, sure, throw it on my salary and keep it working for me like you're doing with our support staff. But, I'm sure if it were, no, we're gonna pay it as a one-time bonus like the money came from the state, they're gonna be thankful for that. So, that really is kind of pleasure of the board, I guess, whatever your vision of that is.
For no more than what it is every year, I think we can treat it the same way as the support staff.
Yeah, probably. You just might have to tighten some belts. Down the road here.
And the board every year, you tell the superintendent, this is what you have to
Down
work
the road
with
in some areas.
for administrative raises. If we really got a budget crisis some year, we were cutting positions or something, then it would make total sense to say, you know what, we're gonna have a freeze here.
Sure.
That's always,
Well, corporations do that all the time.
yeah,
so
yep, it's always
manage it
your
like-
prerogative to do that because the administration is not under a master contract, just like the meet and confer is not, so.
So you want permission to make these all an action item for the May 10th?
But yeah, I want what your thoughts are so that I can bring it, we can bring
We
it
just
to.
need, we need to kind of know the drift so we don't bring something that's radically
Right.
different than what you want.
I'm okay with proceeding.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
These, the positions that will end with COVID funds. Do they know that?
I'm pretty sure that was communicated up front. I was not involved with the hires, but,
Okay.
okay.
Well, we talked about like Tracy Burr's nurse position, will go back to general fund. Really, the reading interventionist, the family liaison are the ones that are gonna be temp. And if I remember correctly, it's my understanding that the rest of them will go back to the general fund.
That's the hope and the
That's the
intention.
plan,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Those are classroom teachers, a lot of those are.
Some of them are raised staff.
2 of them are raised staff.
Yep.
Are you making to keep them?
Because Ray has an
Just
ever-growing,
point that out.
he has an empire, so anytime.
He really, with all the added computers, they really got a lot of extra work.
Is it the raise or is it the people?
There's mine, you know.
Okay,
Good with
thank you.
that?
Well, I
Yep,
think
thank you.
we're
I appreciate the progress we made in getting clarity there and the board's consideration of our staff. I really appreciate, that sends a great message.
You gonna take it over, Rob, or you just wanna
No,
relax?
go for it. Go for it.
I'm trying to keep them waiting.
I'm enjoying this break.
All right, we're gonna move on to the local mitigation planning resolution for natural disasters. This is an action item.
Yep. It is. I think the overview kind of catches it for you in terms of what it is. You know, I believe it's every 5 years that Warren County Disaster Management does a refresh in their hazard mitigation plan. I think that helps them tap into FEMA dollars. Conceivably, since we're part of the plan, a member of it, if we had something come up that required something that would qualify for FEMA dollars, we could apply as well. The way I look at it, it's a good chance to review our emergency operations and look at it in the context of countywide as well. So we've gone through this, the second iteration of this, I think since I've been here. And this resolution and approval of their plans just necessary for them to move forward. So I appreciate Bernie going to the meetings this time and Jonna collaborating with Bernie and me on doing some of the writing of the plan. So we're just ready to approve that resolution.
This is with emergency management with Robust.
Correct. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution adopting the Warren County Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Motion made by Rob.
Wow.
I know.
You're allowed to make a motion.
I haven't.
He jumped all
Get
over
you
that.
Are you all right?
I'll second it.
You're turning red, are you nervous?
Seconded by Mac. Any further discussion on board? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0.
That's so good.
Got one more on here for you, Rob. So, all right,
That's it, you're done, you're done.
I'm ready.
That's it.
Keep on your toes. All right. Facilities projects updates next.
I think you kind of know where we're at. We're auditorium down to those last few things that previously have been shown you on the punch list. Auxiliary Services Building, you approved that tonight. High school renovation, encourage everybody to come out for another community meeting Wednesday. The last one was well attended, April 4th. We do have the IndianoCSDplanning.org website up, and people have the ability to ask questions through that. And I know that Laura Peterson and I have been answering some questions through the website. And that's just another good opportunity to talk about possible direction there. No change in Lord Knows Wilder, the auditorium. Those are still supplies we're waiting on to finish those projects. You approved the reno at the middle school tonight, the low bid on that. And then you have the same major summer projects you've seen before listed below there.
Is there any way, right before, I know the play's Thursday, is there any way to get like an easel and a poster board outside the auditorium that says your tax dollars at work, we spent this much on the auditorium, look at our beautiful auditorium? There's gonna be a lot of community people going through, I think we gotta highlight that.
It's a good idea, and I think, you know, we all do this. It's human nature. What have you done for me lately? Kind of mentality.
Yeah, we've done it lately.
But I think of the, you know, we did some very nice
It's really nice.
upgrades with the seats and everything.
Yes.
You know, that $500,000 or so. I think people probably forget that just before that, we did about $350,000 of safety stuff and rigging.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be huge, but just something
It's a great suggestion, and I know that we have a wonderful facilities director, and his supervisor is very capable too, so I'm confident that between the two of them, by Thursday, they can probably have something on an easel outside the auditorium.
How artistic are you,
Just,
John?
I mean, we may be asking the public for more money down the road. I think they need to see
Yeah, and
something
actually,
tangible.
Well, I'm wondering, they have the TVs out there, that's not good, I mean, the TVs scroll, but maybe that's not
Not
the best
sure
way
everybody
to see
totally
it.
looks at that. I think something sitting
and
there might catch
if we do
people's
want to do
attention.
hard copy, and that's offering up a very capable person at district office to help too.
Kathy does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a great suggestion, Rob. I think we forget to celebrate that stuff enough.
Creative when you sit over there.
Maybe you should do it.
What did you do?
There is so much brain power freed up when
Way to
Rob
bring
isn't
your
at a
A
meeting.
I know. And we were ahead 3-0.
I know, I'm always looking ahead over there.
So
Hey, Rob, if you call me, ask me.
Is tomorrow night's meeting
Call me
at
when I want to feel this.
the media center similar to the last one, or is it gonna have some more information?
It will be similar, but there is some updated information based on feedback they've been gathering along the way. Yep.
Has that been posted as a work session?
He didn't put it as a work session because technically we shouldn't have to, because you're not, even if three or more are coming, I don't know, is anybody coming?
Last time only 2 came,
Yeah.
but even if four,
You're not sitting at the same
four
tables,
people,
you're not
even,
meeting.
yeah, don't group up and talk shop, and we're fine.
Yeah.
If 4 more of you come, so.
Is anybody planning on going?
I have another meeting.
The day is it again?
Tomorrow night?
Tomorrow at 6.
I'd like to try to sneak by, but church.
I might try, I actually have a,
You could.
okay. But
I will check my phone.
Yeah. You're not acting on things, you're not discussing things as the board, you're discussing things as a community.
Who from that? Are you coming again, Art?
I'll be there. I have meetings on either side of it, out of town, but I think it'll work pretty well.
Anyone else from that? Maybe?
I'm sure Bernie will probably be there.
I plan to if I get.
John has got something, she's, if everything works right, she'll be there, so.
Alright. On to board policies.
These are a second reading, and I haven't heard any concerns from first reading to now. I don't know if anybody else has anything.
An action item.
Yeah, I move we approve the second reading of the board policy.
A motion made by Donna. Rob, you
Uh,
okay?
seconded.
Yeah. Seconded by
By Rob.
Rob.
I was trying to beat
Get
Rob.
that down.
I was trying to beat Rob.
You're Stu, I was waiting for you for the first time.
I was trying.
Any further board discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. On to the next board calendar.
I'll send a reminder, but obviously we're not too far off. We've got board policy committee meeting Thursday morning. Mac is gonna jump in there and has an interest on joining that committee as well going forward. And Mr. Siebersma is gonna come because we're dealing with some student policies and things. So we'll meet, instead of my office, just because we've got a little bigger group, let's plan on meeting in here Thursday morning.
Is that the on the discipline policy, coach?
What's that?
The disciplinary policy, is that what you're referring to on the high school?
Yeah, there's a variety of policies in this next batch that deal with attendance and discipline and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do you plan on going to your son's choir concert on May 10th? 'Cause
See, this is news to me.
We both have, well, he's a fifth grader, right? Yeah, we both have a concert tonight. I
I'm
don't know
sure
if
it's
we can-
logged.
If we can,
Wanna start at 5?
May 10th.
if we could start at 5, that would
Yeah, that would be
probably be
good.
the best
On May 10th.
May
on
10th.
May 10th, because we do
Does that
have
work
the
for everybody?
fifth grade concert at like,
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, Mrs. J, if you're listening. News flash, I wake up in the morning to look at what I need to do that day.
Right.
No doubt.
oh,
Like
it's
most of us
yeah,
do.
it actually does start at 6, so.
All right,
well,
yeah, can we start? Or what?
5 PM?
Yeah.
On May 10th.
Who else is going to graduation, you guys? No? Yes.
I would really like to make it work this year, but I have to look at my baseball schedule.
So for sure is 4, maybe 5. Okay.
And I think you got an email asking you to email Stacy Johnson probably.
Just make sure you look at it by Friday, I think.
All right. Next board agenda.
I missed the beginning of the meeting, I'm gonna hop in here real quick. I got to spend some time at Whittier and at Wilder here in the last couple weeks. Very appreciative to both of the principals for taking me around, being able to meet with the staff, saying hi. I also had the opportunity to meet with our transportation director earlier this week. It's great to get down there and see that that building does not need to be replaced, just needs a little paint.
Which one, I didn't hear that.
The bus barn. I thought it was fine.
We're gonna start having our board meetings there.
Walking while the sun is falling on your head, because that's what happened to me.
That building, I'll just say, is at the end of its life. So I was glad to get in there and see him. In addition to the visits that I've made, I did want to make the board aware of the high school's blood drive on May 4th. It's a Wednesday from, I think, 11 to 3:30. I am going to donate some blood at 3:30 if anybody else would like to join the cause. That's something that's been very important to me over the last several years, and I'd love to try to help them get their calendar filled up.
Mac, did you say May 4th?
May 4th, yep.
At the middle school?
At the high school in the, I can't remember which gym it's in.
Change the time if we need to add the,
Should we take a brief break before we go in closed session?
Yeah.
People don't need to be here for that.
Just one quick question on the next agenda. We'll need to change the time to 5, Tim pointed out,
Yep.
and add that action items that we just discussed, right?
Yep.
Yeah, policy.
For the payment.
Yeah, it'll be more than, you mean all the different salaries?
Yeah. Yep.
Rob, here's your chance. Here's your
I
chance.
approve.
Read it.
Make a motion to adjourn.
No.
No?
Oh, shoot.
Point of order.
We have to go to closed session before.
Make a motion to go.
But wait a
to
minute,
closed
wait.
But-
Let's not go to closed session, let's take a break
Let's take
first,
a
then
brief
do it.
break so people who aren't gonna stay in the closed session can leave.
Oh, you don't have to be here?
So I'll stick around. You guys stick around too.
Mac's a new uncle.
We've got a few others.
Congratulations.
Mac's a new uncle.